next speaker, Marty McNair, came in, and he's one of our newest friends to the MRPA family. And I'm gonna read something really quickly, just to introduce, and then I'm gonna let him introduce himself a little bit, because he honestly has one of the most compelling stories that I've ever heard. So Marty McNair, and this is the description from him. He's an author, student athlete, safety advocate, educator, motivational speaker, and entrepreneur, and finally a father. And he has an amazing story to tell, and I'm going to let him tell it. So, Marty McNair, please.
So, coming from lunch, I can see it wasn't a heavy meal, so I'm sure everybody should be up for it. Nobody should have itis, because all I could eat was some salad, so I tried to keep it light. So hi everybody, I'm Marty McNair from the Jordan McNair Foundation. Some of you may know our story. Back in 2018, I lost my son Jordan to a heat-related injury suffered on the very first day of football practice at the University of Maryland, College Park. When I tell you life changed, life has changed. You couldn't have told me 6 years ago this is what I'd be doing for a living these days, educating parents, coaches, student athletes from our foundation's perspective. So basically, 3 days after Jordan passed, or while Jordan was in the hospital initially, first of all, I kept asking myself, what happened, first of all? What did I miss, right? And obviously, it was definitely my fault. So show of hands, how many parents in the room? Got it. So I guarantee you, I hope this never happens to anybody, but in the event something happens to your child, as a father, you're going to feel so many range of emotions. You're going to feel guilty. You're going to feel hopeless. You're going to feel helpless. You're going to feel impotent. I hope nobody feels this, ever has to feel this, ever. But because again, when you think you prepare your son or your child for that next level of life, regardless of if they could have been on the other end of the world and something happened to them, unfortunately, and you're still going to figure, like, how did I prepare them better? So for us, for me, the grief was this was my only son. So the grief was so indescribable that I had to put this pain to some type of purpose. So 3 days later, we started the Jordan McNair Foundation. And basically, one of the things that, out of many things, I kept asking myself while Jordan was in the hospital, we literally went from a healthy guy Tuesday morning to literally an emergency liver transplant less than 3 days later, with less than 72 hours later, with 85% of his liver being in necrosis. He was within 12 hours of his life if we didn't make a decision to get this emergency liver transplant. But one of the things I kept asking myself was, I thought I knew a little bit about everything. So basically, I didn't know anything about a heat-related injury at this time. Didn't know anything about a heat-related injury. I didn't know that any type of statistics or anything prior to Jordan passing. I didn't know that he fell into predictable statistics, meaning that he would be one of 2 to 3 that would die every year from a heat-related injury. This was predictable. I didn't know about any kids that had died at the NCAA level, the high school level, and definitely not at the youth level as well. So as we kind of went on, our pain turned into a purpose, and this is where we are moving forward. So going into year 6, so the interesting thing is this. This is the time of year when I'm usually in front of crowds and I'm asking for end of the year donations. So today I'm not going to do that. I'm going to educate everybody on some things. So even for me, a lot of times we really focus on, today's topic is enhancing youth sports safety, risk management legislation. So our foundation's mission is the awareness, education, and the prevention of heat-related injuries. So we have a multi-tier approach. We have an administrator's training, which we focus on risk management, like yourselves, a room of administrators. We have a coach's training where we call it the X's and O's of player safety. And basically, coaches are proper training on what to do, what not to do. And then we also have a parent education training called Can My Child Play? Because as parents, like myself, I only ask 2 questions. Anybody gonna tell me what those 2 questions were? I wrote a book titled this as well, but anybody know what the average 2 questions that parents usually ask?
How much is the cost?
Somebody tell me.
How much does it cost?
Can they play and why aren't they playing? That's all we're concerned about. We don't think, what if? We don't have a what if mindset. I didn't have a what if mindset when the coaches from University of Maryland were sitting at my kitchen table 3 days prior to signing day. I asked 2 questions. Coach, can he get some playing time? And then I asked what their stance was around mental health and substance abuse support, just because I was in that particular business at the time. So as we kind of move along, and the reason I'm here today is basically tell you a little bit about who we are, what we do. but really what I'm here today is this. To really try to focus on or get your legislative support, right? And what this is going to make sense. Because see, you can go keep going. See, as you can see, since Jordan passed, we've literally got 4 laws passed in the state of Maryland around student athlete safety. We've gotten the Jordan McNair Youth Athletic Protection Act back in 2019 with my Baltimore City crew in the back. Raise your hands, what's happening? Then we got the Jordan McNair Act of 2020, that was a collegiate bill. Then we got the Jordan McNair Safe and Fair Play Act, which was in 2021. So if you got any kids at the NIL or they got an NIL deal or family members in the state, guess what? That's in Jordan's name. That's a bill that I worked on diligently for this one. And then our 4th bill was House Bill 836. House Bill 836, so those of you all that may have kids in middle school and high school, at the public school level, it's mandated that all public and middle and public high schools have mandatory emergency action plan and training twice a year. That was a bill that I brought to the state. That was a bill that I worked on, and it's interesting because I was listening to somebody, I was sitting at a table and I was just listening to some of the challenges that we have as organizations within our municipalities and things like that. And a lot of times it's all about politics. Who got the money? You made a very good point. It's new people, a new governing body comes in, and basically they got to get out. They may get out, so we're trying to get everything that we can get in the process. And our last bill, which we introduced to the Congress, which is the Jordan McNair Heat Fatality Prevention Act. So that was introduced this year. So I don't know, any legislators in the room by chance? Anybody know how to get a bill passed by chance? All right, great. All right, this is going to be great information today. So what we did was, and this is how people come to me all the time. Marty, we got a bill. The bill got passed in this state. Can you give us some support on this bill? Or can you get us some support in this bill? Yeah, I can easily call 3 or 4, 5, 6, 7 legislators that I may have on speed dial, whether it's a senator here, congressperson here, council person here, and basically I can always call and say, hey, you know what? We got a bill. Would you sponsor this bill? Interesting thing about bills is this. It's easy, I can't say it's easy to get a bill, but the interesting thing, when you get a bill passed, that's really the easy part of the bill, of advocacy. The hard part of advocacy is letting people know that these bills are in motion and they affect the constituents or the stakeholders that these bills apply to, all right? So, I'm talking about 2 bills today. So somebody came to me recently with a bill, and it's called the Coach Safely Bill, and it was basically like, Marty, we got this bill passed in Alabama, so basically our goal for the Jordan McNair Foundation is to be within 5 states within the next 7 years. So currently we do a lot of stuff in the state of Georgia and obviously the state of Maryland. But the interesting thing was with this particular bill, they're like, hey, we got this bill, it's passed in Alabama, and the interesting thing is everything about this bill, it applies to all coaches that deal with student athletes 14 and under, right? And they have these particular training modules and all these different things. So the bill is called Coach Safely, and the training module is called Play Safely, right? Now, interesting thing, I'd be remiss if I brought somebody else's bill in here today asking for your support if I didn't talk about the Jordan McNair Youth Athletic Protection Act that got passed in Baltimore City in 2019. Same bill. But again, it's like, you know what? It would be disrespectful for me not to mention this bill. Y'all agree? Yeah. All right, now I gotta come back to Baltimore. I live in Baltimore, so I don't want nobody after. So the interesting thing, we have basically the Jordan McNair Youth Protection Act, and basically it has a training attached to it. But you're probably asking, why am I even coming in here talking about a bill? You know why? Because I'd already told you what the process was before. So a lot of times I could just call legislator, hey, I need you to sponsor this bill, versus I never really came to the sponsors or the people that the bill affects to get their support first, which is you all. See, so basically I was thinking like, how should I approach this? And basically I'd rather come to you all, get your feedback on it first, and then if it's something that we can all agree to, let's push for the 2025 legislative session. I know the process. I know how to get a bill passed. Take my word for it. I've given myself the term or the title of lay legislative liaison. That's a true one. Look that one up. Somebody gave that to me, but I adopted that as well. Next slide, please. So basically, with the Jordan McNair Youth Protection Act, Bill number 1, basically it has 6 training elements to it. And the main thing that we all want to focus on, and basically I was listening to the people at the table I was talking about, all we really want to do is create a baseline standard. You take a bill to Congress, baseline standard, meaning, guess what, we got one bill that goes over the whole nation. See, because when I initially brought this bill, how many, show of hands, or just how many of us from different counties in here? How many different counties we got? Somebody give me the numbers.
It's
17 counties. So that means we would have 17 individual versions of a bill.
And municipalities.
And a municipality.
Oh, it's more than that.
Right, so let's just say 20, 25, is that fair?
Yeah.
That's 25 different versions where in reality, if we can create one baseline standard, that covers everybody. And we can all, in the room, put something towards it or put our input or any type of output on it, we can do that. So basically, with the bill that we have in Baltimore City, the Jordan McNair Youth Athletic Protection Act, training covers all 6 requirements of the bill. I know a lot of us may be doing this in our states, in our municipalities and counties, we should be, but basically this just boils down to basic student athlete safety and risk management. And basically we cover everything from emergency action plan implementation, concussion risk management, heat exhaustion risk and management, heat stroke risk and management, operation of an automated external defibrillator, sudden cardiac arrest risk and management, and in Baltimore City with that particular bill, we focused on social services, where we partnered with social services to identify any type of child abuse or anything like that. Interesting thing about a bill, it can be tweaked. So, you know, the main thing is we got a bunch of thought leaders in the room where we possibly can make some serious impact, or we can just pretty much leave it the same. A lot of times when you look at legislation, guess what? We get one bill may have had success in another state. All we really do is just like, hey, let's kind of look at it this way, this way, this way, make a couple tweaks to our state, bam, and we kind of go from there. So that's bill number 1. That's the Jordan McNair Youth Athletic Protection Act. All right, now, the Coach Safely Act, which I told you, some colleagues from Alabama had some success with this bill in the state of Alabama and in the state of Arkansas. And basically, this bill made legislative history in 2018, designed to create a new standard in youth sports safety, led to a breakthrough in public policy in the state of Alabama. The Coach Safely Act, passed the Alabama legislature and signed by Governor Kay Ivey, became the first law in the United States requiring youth coaches to be trained annually in a comprehensive course of injury recognition and prevention to protect their athletes ages 14 and under. Similar bill, right? Since that groundbreaking achievement, the Coach Safely Foundation has worked with legislators in other states to introduce and adopt similar statutes. Those efforts have begun to bear fruit. Arkansas has passed the Coach Safely Act. Tennessee has added the Coach Safely Amendment to an existing sports safety law. Texas has introduced a similar legislation, and the Georgia State Senate has passed a resolution recommending that youth coaches be trained in injury recognition and prevention. Same thing. We got 6, they got 9, right? Basically the same type of training course, emergency preparedness, coaching the youth athlete, mental health 1 and 2. I think this stands mental health, where the Jordan McNair Act doesn't cover that. Emergencies in athletes, sudden cardiac arrest, conditions to youth, unique to youth athletes, overuse injuries, concussions 1 and 2, communicable and infectious diseases. Pretty much the same thing a lot of training organizations do. All right, so the average statistic in youth sports, and I'm sure I might be singing to the choir with a lot of this stuff, but again, we all know the average kids 5 to 14 participate in over 40 million U.S. student athletes and children. 5 to 14 participate in organized sports. These youth bear a disproportionate burden of sports injuries. Heat illnesses are recognized as the leading cause of death and disability among high school and college athletes. However, you can't talk about a heat-related injury without talking about cardiac arrest. You can't talk about heat-related injury and cardiac arrest without talking about concussions. So you can't talk about them 3 without talking about what we call hemoglobin. So it's the 4 H's: head, heart, hemoglobin, and heat. So concussion, heat stroke, cardiac arrest, and sickle cell disease. Those are primary concerns when you talk about student athlete safety or injuries or tragedies, most important. All right, so I I just talked about it. Deaf and youth sports. I'm a couple slides ahead. So, case study. I do a lot of stuff in Georgia. And one of the things as an advocate, I do a lot of coaches training, I do a lot of parent education training, and it's very, very, anybody in here from Georgia? My man. Okay. What's your name, sir? Oh, Mr. Moore, how are you, sir? Good. Well, I hope I'm not offending anybody in the room. Mr. Moore, I'll tell you, it's very disheartening to walk on South Fulton County, Gresham Park. I can go on and on and on, and these people aren't prepared. I did 20 sports clinics this summer alone. 10 across the state of Georgia. I didn't walk on anybody's field that had an emergency action plan. They didn't have a cold water tub. They didn't have an AED machine. These people were not prepared for anything. Don't be that. Did I soften that up, sir?
No, you're right.
Thank you. So, in this case right here, I'm just using this as a quick case study. So I hope none of my bold lettering or capital lettering, I'm not yelling at anybody, I'm just trying to make a point. So, the Johnny Tolbert III's case story, right? 12-year-old dies after passing out at football practice. Wrongful death complaint between the parents and the Park and Recs organization. So this is what we're doing the case study on. This is basically just a couple notes. This is an action to hold the defendants accountable for the wrongful death of Johnny Tolbert III, age 12, who died on July 28, 2016, after suffering a fatal heat stroke injury on July 14, 2016. During an outdoor football-related activity administered and negligently mismanaged by the defendants in 113-degree heat index temperature conditions that resulted in Johnny Tolbert experiencing heat-related injury. He was in a coma for 2 weeks before taking off life support on July 28, 2016, at which time he subsequently died. This happens a lot more than you think. Take my word for it. And the value of this is shock value, just to kind of give everybody, because a lot of times in our space, I think nowadays, a lot of the speaking engagements I've had more this year, especially in the last couple months, has been more around administrators looking at risk management and how to protect themselves. So, next slide, please. The operating facts of the complaint filed by the parents. Just basically condition it was hot, they weren't prepared, they didn't have water. Mr. Moore, you already know, and the thing is that South Fulton Park, guess what? It might be 8 to 10 fields on there, but the interesting thing, they were all the way in the back. They didn't have a water source or anything there. They didn't have an emergency action plan. So even if you did call 911, what you gonna tell them? So most of the time when I'm talking to parents, a lot of times, you know, I always ask, hey, if something happened right now, what would you do? Well, I'll call 911 and say what? Do you know what field you're on? Do you know the address of the park? These are just things that we can't take for granted that people know because they don't. So from an administrator's perspective, this is where we had to cover our butts in a sense. All right. So emergency medical assistance, he unfortunately he fell out. Took 20 minutes for the EMTs to get there. And it just went all downhill from there. Even with my own son's case, a University of Maryland, his College Park, a Big Ten school with all the money in the world. Guess what? When my son went down that day, they did not follow an emergency action plan. If it could have went wrong that day, it did go wrong that day. They were on one practice field. The EMTs over here. There's construction on campus. They over here. So all of that time that it took for them to get to my son got to the ER an hour and 37 minutes later with a core body temperature of 106 degrees. Now you see why 85% of his liver was in necrosis. He burned up right there. And to those of us that know what a heat-related injury is, basically a heat stroke is the equivalent of your body being in a microwave oven. We put food in the microwave to do what? Cook. You got a 20 to 30 minute window to cool that core body temperature down before damage becomes irreparable. Same way with this young man. They were not more prepared in the event of. Next slide, please. Now, count number one. I said pardon the capitalized letter, but I'm doing it for effect. Count number one, negligence. Failure to properly assess and respond to atmospheric conditions, meaning it was too hot. It was too hot to be out there that day with running up and down hills, doing sprints or whatever. Somebody should have made an executive decision. Count 2, failure to provide for adequate rest breaks. How you gonna have kids running and you ain't giving them rest breaks? Coaches. Count 3, failure to provide for proper hydration. Count 4, failure to have an adequate emergency action plan in place. Everybody in the room, this is what I do for a living. Whether it's cardiac arrest, heat stroke, concussions, you name it, when we see a lot of these deaths, see everybody, a lot of us never even, before I go there, show of hands, how many know what an emergency action plan is? Got it. I always tell laymen, it's the equivalent of a fire drill. Guess what? Everybody leaves out, we go stand across the street, we probably was at our desk doing some online shopping or something like that, but that's an emergency action plan. But the interesting thing when we, at the sports level, when we're dealing with children, every time we walk on the field, a fire can happen just like that, literally. So we always got to practice at EAP. They didn't have one. Failure to have an adequate emergency action plan in place. Count number 5. Failure to properly and individually assess the participants' fitness for strenuous outdoor summertime football-related conditioning activities. Basically, you didn't even know what acclimation was. First day of practice, you ain't running up and down no hills. Come on, these are kids. You gotta give them an opportunity, but you gotta know what acclimation is before you can, that sounds like a big word, but if you don't know what acclimation is, and most coaches that are volunteer coaches, they probably play sports somewhere themselves. Their heart's in the right place, but they aren't medical professionals, flat out. And that's as parents, we think that they are. Next, impunitive damages. We all know that was coming, am I right? Anybody show of hands? Since everybody here is from a county. Anybody know the difference between a state cap versus a county cap or a municipality cap in a wrongful death situation?
Is that the $200,000?
Correct. At the state level, it's a wrongful death cap of $400,000. State hospital, state school, state police officer, state prison, state facility, right? But when you look at these, I'm sure where probably a lot of you all are from, Baltimore City, Annapolis, Montgomery County, it's a whole different animal right there. I tell people all the time, all it takes is the wrong kid to get hurt and the right lawyer. You will feel it. We all feel it because we all taxpayers. Where do you think that money is coming from? So punitive damages always make a big difference when it comes to that. And it's always important to know, because again, I don't expect anybody in the room to be, hey, well, I know what the cap is, but these are all things that we should be thinking about when it comes to risk management, because that encompasses all of this. The following negligence claims frequently appear in sports-related injury cases: failure to properly train, failure to be properly credentialed, inadequate supervision, and failure to have an emergency medical plan. That's it. For me, 3 years later, when I sat down, my family sat down with an athletic trainer that was on the field that day, the medical professional on the field that day, I'm all dealing with facts at this point. My emotions kind of gone out the window at this point. But at the end of the day, they didn't follow the emergency action plan. It's all, when you look at every death across the nation, it always boils down, that's the one common denominator. Did they have an emergency action plan? Or if they did have one, was it followed? Was it practiced first? Was it practiced and wasn't followed? And a lot of times it just wasn't. So, risk management discussion, show of hands. Who's liable in this case study? Somebody just shout it out, I don't care.
I said the recreation department.
The recreation department. So I'm gonna tell you how it's gonna go. What's your name, man?
Shelley.
Hi, Shelly, how are you? As a parent, parents gonna blame coaches first. It was coach's fault. But in reality, if coach was never trained, how was it his fault? So once they get a lawyer, it's going, look, the finger pointing changes at that point. Once they get lawyered up, we get some representation and litigation comes in, now it's like, okay, coach ain't got no money. And unfortunately, you can't put a price on a child's life. I know that personally. But again, this is what it looks like. So, obviously it wasn't the coaches on the field. I think we all agree, show of hands, it was the Park and Recreations organizations. Yes, ma'am.
No, I don't necessarily agree. I mean, I think it depends on how the team is on the field, whether the water fountain, if there's a water fountain, if it's working. I mean, I think there are a whole bunch of variables. I think the parents play a role in this, depending on the age of the children too, because I think parents should send their children with water, when they, come to work out or, what have you.
Anybody agree, disagree? Look,
Care and custody is a big deal, so that's where I think some of the shift happens. And I agree with Roz. I mean, if the park, it could be a number of players. So if the park and recreation department is permitting out to another organization, I think all those folks end up getting named in that suit regardless. Everybody working that day is going to be named in that suit up to the chain of command, but whether I think a lot of it will go into the agreements and requirements to have a permit to be on the field, who's the organization permitting that field at that time, and then it's going to go in, it could go in a number of different directions. But whoever's assuming care and custody of the children, I mean, that's a big deal.
Absolutely. If it's our program, like you said, Adrian, then yeah,
I believe recreation, me being a park administrator, I believe recreation parks should have a standard already set, and whoever they permit to, they should have a requirement for who they permit to, that they have all of their stuff in order. So they should have an action plan already, or have been trained for an action plan on that field. But if not, recreation park shouldn't permit out to them. I think they should already have something in place.
but then that puts the onus on us to check and make sure that they have that, and you've met our volunteers.
Yeah, but if it's our stuff.
If it's ours, then
No, I'm saying if it's our stuff that we're permitting out, we should have something in our contract stating that they have training or somebody have training for that.
anybody else want to chime in? No, Mr. Moore, no, hold tight, Mr. Moore. Anybody else want to chime in? Mr. Moore, help us out.
No, I mean, I understand Roger's point, I understand Roger's point. At the end of the day, the property is owned by the city of that municipality, right? So if and I'm somewhat familiar with the case of that kid you talking about in Georgia, the South Fulton League, it's an independent league that uses South Fulton's facility. However, South Fulton did not cover, dot the I's and cross all the T's to make sure there was proper training place. One thing that the Marty McNair youth field in Baltimore did was it has challenged us as an agency, and it's things we're still working through. But we have youth associations that use all our facilities. But now going forward, when you get to the committee that Roger's talking about, because the bill calls for them to have trained AED, well, you gotta have AEDs in those practices, you gotta have someone who can utilize those AEDs in those sites. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. McNair, but I think we're moving towards cooling tubs, that's gonna be, has to be at these sites. But we as an agency can't be in all these spaces, we got 170 athletic fields with 50+ associations. So it is gonna challenge us differently on how we can manage this, but this is now a bill, it's a law that's in Baltimore that ultimately, at the end of the day, if somebody dies, it's gonna come back on us, regardless of the youth association. And it's, youth association also should be upset with us because we're gonna really push a whole lot of these things, and it has to come out of their coffers. It's not something that we, as a city, should be paying. We're providing the AEDs, but the training, another thing we did,
Mr. Moore, let me put a pin. You're moving fast. You're moving faster than me. Let me ask you a question, Mr. Moore. With the Jordan McNair Youth Protection Act, can anybody use your fields without them being trained in the safety training?
according to the bill, it should not be used on.
My point. That's the point that I'm making. So that's the point that I'm making.
So not even pick up, like if my family wants to play, Kelly's family, we have to permit the field and we can't just go out there and play?
I think there's some of the implementation challenges, right? So we fully, support the bill, but some of it is just that, right? I may pull a permit that says I'm gonna have a birthday party, but I really have like a big kickball game with a bunch of people, and it's 115 degrees outside, and I didn't know. So there are certain challenges, and then we do hundreds of permits a day, right? Thousands over a season. What does that look like operationally?
that's why we're here today. So it was, as opposed to me just saying, hey, I can go to a legislator and say, hey, everybody, this is what it is. No, that's why we got enough people in the room to really see what some of the challenges are, ebbs, flows, what can we improve on, how can we make it better, just to tweak it. So of course, and the main thing that I agree with everybody, these types of things happen. However, I think that when it's your facility, your parks and recreation facilities, you have to from a risk management perspective, hey, put systems in place to say, okay, this is what it is. If you're using this facility, these are the trainings. Give you a prime example. So I don't know if you all, I don't know the process to get a permit, but so do you all require like an insurance policy or something like that? Like $1 million coverage or something like that? I can't do a clinic anyway without walking on the field with my own insurance policy. Bottom line. However, even in regards to an insurance policy, they definitely want to ask you a couple questions. Now, this could be something like saying, hey, you know what, in the event of you want a permit, you got to take a 15 or a 20-minute video, right? So it's a couple different ways really to maximize the risk management, because the thing is, we can never not say, we did not have a conversation with you and you took this training and this is a level of accountability here saying that you said that you would adhere to the various rules of our organization or this particular facility, meaning you ain't saying you coming in having a tea party and you having some kickball tournament, right? Because again, yes ma'am.
So one of the requirements I saw, it said that training for an AED.
Correct.
So are we required to have an AED at our fields? Because we don't.
So, wise investment. So one of the things early on, Mr. Moore, at that time, back in 2019, I always thought that really, hey, one bill in Jordan's name would have been fine with me. So even with looking at draft bills with City Council, our mayor now, but he's the City Council president, I really didn't even know what I was looking at. So a lot of stuff looked fantastic on paper. Now that I've graduated to a lay legislative liaison, I can look at something on paper and say, yeah, that looked good, but that don't make sense. That's not realistic logistically. So a lot of times in those cases, I always say, I heard y'all talking about spending $700,000 on lights. Somebody spent $700,000. I hope I ain't putting nobody's business out there. But again, we can go ahead and put a mobile or a stationary AED machine in all of our facilities. I think that works better than trying to say, okay, we're gonna give all these people, all these teams an AED machine, because I'm gonna tell you what's gonna happen. Somebody gonna forget it the day they need it. Versus, yes ma'am.
Just question, is there a difference between like facilities, because I agree with you, we're fortunate we have them at our facilities, but I think the challenge for us is remote parks. Now we actually permit parks from another department. However, you have that one standalone field in the middle of the neighborhood where there really are no facilities there at all, not even bathrooms.
Right.
What are, I think that's where I think the challenge will become some of the sort of the infrastructure related pieces. But I think the other things are really doable pieces.
Yep. And the main thing that we want to do is we want to create a baseline standard. We don't need 20 versions of this. All we need is one good one. That's it. And that way it's applicable or it's mandated by the state. And I just think that, again, this is just an early conversation right now. Let's start here, and then, if it gains enough momentum, then, hey, I can get on a call. I'm like, hey, you know what, pick this bill up. I got the support of the constituents. Bam, and this should be, I can't never say it's easy, but it should be an easier process.
Can your bill attach funding to it?
Well, what's your name, man?
Stephanie.
Hi, Stephanie. That was coming, because of course, training costs money. And even with Coach Safely in Alabama, they get Alabama Power to donate. Man, they support the whole state, so they may pay $800,000 and all that. But this is the interesting thing, right? So when we talk about money, everybody kind of, look, a good idea, and now our minds start racing. However, I always tell people all the time, I believe in an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. I'd rather invest a little bit of money on the front end for some training versus the millions of dollars you're gonna pay with the right lawyer, the right kid, wrong lawyer, or vice versa, because they're gonna fleece you. I hate to say it, but you know, they gonna get you.
And I hear you, but like from our standpoint, and I'm not in any way, shape, or form justifying or making excuses for anything.
Sure.
But for us, it's two separate pots of money. Like the attorney's office has the payout. We never see it. They negotiate sometimes, so we don't see it.
Sure.
But we have our operating budgets, and that money, and I'm talking only finances, I'm not talking people, I'm not talking right thing to do,
Sure,
I'm not
sure.
talking any of that. But that money that we have is operational.
Yep.
So I can't say, oh, I'm gonna spend this $300,000 out of my budget because I won't have to spend $5 million later on.
Right.
I have to say, where can I find this $300,000? And depending on my jurisdiction and my budget, I'm like, okay, well that means I can't hire this person.
Sure.
Or I can't do that, you know, so, and I hear what you're saying, because it seems simple. Instead of spending $700,000 on the lights, get this AED. But then we have the community breathing down our backs. We're like, we need lights, you know, so.
So this is the main thing. You know, again, we're talking risk management here. Can we really put a value on risk management? And again, I don't want to put the
No,
cart.
and I
I'm
agree.
just planting seeds today.
Right.
That's it.
Yep.
You know, we can't, because at the end of the day, let me tell you how people think, how parents think. Keep putting my son in the game, put my son in the game. And you know, kid may not be ready. Put him in the game, he get hurt. It's your fault, coach. So now we have to have, and I think even as administrators of organizations, we still have to have that final say or make that executive decision where we have to emphasize safety. Because see, once the safety come in, it start rolling uphill versus downhill. Oh, who didn't put this? Who didn't put that? And a lot of times, Stephanie, right?
It's really Rosalind.
That's why everybody was laughing at me. Okay. But Rosalind, you can pretty much see, and a lot of times it may not even be 300,000. You know, a lot of times, like, depending on what we do, we basically come in as an organization, we do emergency action plan audits, like, hey, okay, this is what you got, this is where you can improve, you know, this is where the training comes in at. So basically, it wouldn't be as much as you, and I know 300 was just a number we just pulled out of the sky, but a lot of times, risk management and education is affordable. And that's the point that I'm making versus you could have paid X amount of dollars on I don't want to say the low end, but in a realistic perspective, and versus paying something 20 times that amount. Yes, sir.
So the way I see it is, all right, we go back to our government, and we ask for the resources. And once you ask for the resources, they deny us because we asked for the resources with justification.
Sure.
And once they deny it, then we have something to fall back on because we said we asked for these resources because we do need these resources in these areas. And we filed what we asked for because we are trying to implement this plan.
Yep.
And once we do that, especially gaining this information, once we do that, and we take it to the council, and we take it to them, and ask for the resources for this, with this justification, I think, you know, the liability goes back to the city, to the council. I mean, they're gonna say something to us, but we can go back to saying, look, we asked for this very reason, and you know, then they can't say, oh, I'm a far rider, because they didn't do nothing. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Mr. Moore.
Just quick, Rodney, just to add once the Georgia youth act became law, it was a financial question that we had to ask because it required AEDs, and we had to push that back on our elected officials. Like, I don't have this in my budget, so this past budget cycle, they put $350,000 in our budget to purchase AEDs because they knew that this was a law that they adopted. So you're gonna put this mandate on us, then you gotta fund it. If not, the city becomes liable for the neglect. So I just want to add.
Good. Glenn, congratulations. We've been trying to figure that out for the last couple of years.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
How are you handling AEDs at like a remote location?
It's those challenges that we're trying to work through right now because kind of like what Mr. McNair was talking about, is there an opportunity that we can leave these AEDs? That becomes a challenge because of locations, the conditions of the environment. So we're still trying to figure that piece out. And he's right. We as an agency has really been going around trying to figure this out. The fields that's in that rec center diseases, AEDs and rec centers, they have
It's stuck in someone else's trunk, you know?
Right, so we're still trying to work through the remote location. Like she said earlier, it's not perfect yet. We're moving in the right direction by doing the trainings, by going and purchasing AEDs and figuring out how to deploy them to the remote area.
But are you liable now though, if something happens on a remote field and you haven't been in, you don't have an AED at a remote field, if something happens there, are you actually liable now?
City won't supposed to be liable, yes.
Yeah.
But the city when they adopt this law, you adopt all the liabilities, but you had the liabilities report.
Right.
I mean, at the end of the day, I'm not trying to be funny. You can have the train, they can have the AED there. If somebody dies, they still gonna find a smart lawyer that's gonna find a way to get around everything that you have in place. So in a sense, to me, we're liable regardless of everything we have in place. There's still gonna be a loophole somebody's gonna find. But all we can do is make sure that we are, as much as we can, complying to the bill and the law that's been put in place. So, I mean, I think we all can do it.
But I would offer that, I'm sorry, go ahead.
We have a stationary LED,
I know what you meant.
We have a stationary LED that, is a box and it stays at our tennis court. So we are looking to put all through the city of Annapolis in our athletics facility. So this program that we just ran with this one, it's working very well. If you open the box to go to the AED, it sends a signal to the police department, fire department, it sends signals to several different departments, and it sends signals to us recreation parks, whoever can get there first. But our AED is at our pickleball courts, where the most vulnerable people are to use them. And believe it or not, it saved their life just about 3 months ago, going to the box, opening the box, and getting the AED out there and using it. But the good part about that is, all the recreation parks, because it's going into our parks, so all the park people, managers do have that signal run straight to their phone. So once it's open for vandalism or anything like that, we can go straight there. Or police, when they know we're not there, the police or the fire department, they go in this chain.
And one thing I've never seen anybody selling an AED on the street. What would you even get it for? Like, really, that's like, what would be the value? I mean, of course, what would be the value of that? But even in regards to what you're saying, tell me your name.
Adrian.
Hey, Adrian. Adrian, so one of the main things, like when you said that remote location there, just look at this remote location. There's no water source, right? There's no water source, and obviously, it could be, they may not have access to a lot of, not even a bathroom. That's kind of like a recipe for disaster already, because at the end of the day, like, you're not prepared. Now, keep in mind, I think a lot of times that they're on water source, this is our main focus is always, if people are properly trained, you can pretty much get around anything in a sense. I mean, or you'll be prepared for when things happen. It's not a matter of what's going to happen. You got to be prepared when it happens. So yeah, okay, somebody that they may not have a water source, but if they got plenty of ice, water, your parents are trained and your parents know. I always tell parents all the time, best thing you can do is bring as much ice as you can possibly bring to a practice. Worst thing that happen, ice is going to melt. Best thing to do is save a life, enough to a point where we can get the other medical professionals there. And that's really a lot of the main things, but that really boils down to a strong practice emergency action plan.
Yeah, and I'm thinking to the point of, like you said, getting feedback on what we can get past
Sure.
versus what will be a sticking point. And while I think it would be amazing to have AEDs at every practice, I think the feasibility of it is just not there for especially some departments. But do we let that be the holdup, or do we make the adjustment? You know what I mean?
Make the adjustment,
And that's
yeah.
what I think, make the
Correct.
adjustment.
You do a rule of thumb type scenario. Just because you don't have this piece of equipment, you're not going to stop the product. You want to go to the next thing at that point, right? Any other comments?
How are you adjusting the schools? Because a lot of times we utilize school property,
Okay.
and so
Well, in the state of Maryland, obviously, we already had, that was our last bill, House Bill 836. So basically, that means that the emergency action plans should be ran for practice twice a year, beginning every spring and every fall season. So a lot of times it's just really that training. Now that's for schools, not for Parks and Recreation or anything somebody may be using the facilities. But it really just boils down to implementation of the trainings.
Well, no, I mean, like, I'm thinking AEDs on schools, we use elementary fields and kind of all those
Sure.
types of things. And then
Yep.
you're talking about ice, like, that's not our facility. We can't even get the custodian to open the buildings when we go into the schools, let alone when we're out on the field, so.
That's why you gotta cover your own stuff. Yes, sir.
Well, I don't want to go specifically to the schools. We all work in partnership with the schools within our jurisdictions. But I will tell you from our perspective, the school system, our school system has portable AEDs that are only used for school-related activities.
Yep.
So they're not available to us or our recreation council partners. And when we started talking about, okay, well, what do we do about putting portable AEDs on school property, the first thing that came to us and said, well, who's going to check those on a weekly basis? Because if they fail, it's your liability. And then you talk about lawyers. Then we had school system lawyers talking with county lawyers.
Yeah.
And at this point, nothing's happened.
Yeah.
Because of the whole idea of, you talk about liability, well, there's a certain degree of liability that the school system has said, unless they're properly maintained in the school system view, proper maintenance, then they're not gonna take on the liability. And frankly, at this point, both the school system and to a degree our county attorneys have taken the approach of, we aren't gonna do anything because we aren't changing what's already not there.
Yeah, we definitely have some uphill battle, for sure. And look, and that was the purpose of having this conversation, really, like, let's see how we can, find out what best practices are. That luckily, the good point, we have a starting point, but we have a template. And obviously with the Baltimore City bill, definitely, I can pretty much see, like, really, regardless of coach safety from Alabama versus Baltimore City, at least we got somebody, a colleague that already has the template that we know that we can ask questions on a consistent basis. All right. So, legislation support and a call to action. Obviously, we need to have some continued conversation about this. I literally left a flyer on a brochure on everybody's on everybody's desk. Please reach out. Let's continue the conversation. If everybody has a business card, I'd definitely like to grab your business card for sure. Just wave them up. I'll send Lauren, my assistant, to run around and grab it. And the main goal that I think, if I haven't discussed anything or emphasized anything enough today, baseline standard. That's the magic word here. Baseline standard. We don't need multiple versions of this. We just need one good version. That's it. We literally need one good version. That is it. Something that works. We know it works, or we can tweak it, or something that's already in play. And I just think that that's usually the best way to go. Obviously, just a show of hands. Coach safely. Show of hands. Coach safely. Anybody? Is that appealing to anybody? The Coach Safely bill? Okay. The Jordan McNair Youth Protection Act. Show of hands.
I'm sorry, what do you?
So I'm asking what bill would make sense to everybody. So Coach Safely. Show of hands. All right. The Jordan McNair Act. The Jordan McNair bill. All right. Obviously, that seems like that's the winner. Right. What I would suggest from a call to action perspective, when you go home, when you go back to your facilities, increase trainings, increase education, increase your coaches' training, increase your parents' training. You can't do that enough. To me, I think that in my world of reality, I think that no parent should be able to allow their child to even play, or you should, because I think you all have the power in regards to your organizations. Nobody should even let their child, you shouldn't let a child play without parents being educated on this first, because like you said, somebody said the onus falls on the parents as well. You can't just say, hey, here's my kid, and even though we've done that for years, some of us in the room probably have done it. Here's my kid, and we'll have him sign up, or we'll sign him up, and we don't know what type of credentials, safety credentials, or training, or medical information, or if they are prepared in the event of, we just kind of sign them up and don't ask none of these questions at all. So again, I think that coaches training, parent education should be I'm a firm believer, twice a year, before every spring season starts, and definitely if they signing up for fall practice or fall season, they should have another training again. Because keep in mind, it's not a matter of when, and the more educated people are. show of hands, how many of us are CPR certified? Got it. Anybody know anybody been CPR certified within the last year? Got it. Somebody tell me the compressions to breaths. See my point?
30 to 2.
32.
30 to 2.
It was a change, no breath, it was a change.
Oh, it's no breaths now? See my point? I ain't took mine in
Well,
a
it
couple of
depends, are you
years. Right.
National Safety Council or?
See my point?
Compressions are-
See my point though? Again, you know, a lot of times if it's not consistent or we're not, you know, as adults, we have delayed attention, right? So again, you know, I just think that the more educated that we all are, the safer all of our kids will be. And I think from this room, with this group of people, you know, risk management should always be, you know, we always have to think of the worst case scenario all the time to protect ourselves. It might not be a happy thought, but we just got to be realistic in these types of things. And then if you need some training, of course, call us, the Jordan McNair Foundation. We ain't gonna charge you $300,000.
Oh, that's my favorite price. Oh, wait.
Oh, cool. Well,
You said you're not gonna charge us 300. I thought
No.
you said it was free.
No.
Okay.
Let me tell you this. The interesting thing is this. So, in 2019, our whole process was very organic, right, and incremental. And at that time, I thought it was just all about donating the cold water tub. If a cold water tub had been on the field that day, Jordan would still be here, right? However, it wasn't about cold water tubs. I've donated over 500 cold water tubs in the last 6 years. But that first year, anybody that needed a tub here, from Alaska to Florida, that's how we donated these tubs. The craziest story, I don't want to go into that, but we got maybe like 200 out that year, right? And they were just free. And then I started to realize as we kind of went on, like, people don't respect free. Free don't have a value. Think about it. Nothing free has a value. Because if somebody tried to give you something in the street, you're like, I don't want that. Like, because it's free. So what we started doing was, even to get a cold water tub, you would have to go through a 30-minute training. Even if it's just 30 minutes of your time. Because now I know I'm covered from a liability perspective. My heart was in the right place in 2019. I didn't know any better. Now we've kind of talked about, look, you can't get a cold water tub. We'll donate them, but you can't get one unless you take an emergency action plan training first. You can't get a training unless you go through our whole little series of trainings. That way, like you said earlier, or Mr. Moore said, at least we covered. It may be a loophole, but at least I'm covered. You just can't say, oh, I got this tub from the Jordan McNair Foundation and it's inoperable, or you did something wrong. See that? Hey, look, that would have been on me because I didn't properly do what I was supposed to do. So that's where we are with that. But if you need any type of trainings, you have our information. Our schedule gets extremely busy, especially peak season for us is like pretty much April through September. And like I said, we're in a couple different states, but we can do the heavy lifting. So if you want to think about it, you want to hire us, we definitely let it come in. We can look at your emergency action plans. My team can look at your EAPs. I have basically a team of certified medical professionals, meaning certified athletic trainers. They're the medical professionals on the field. Okay, and also, hold on, go back real quick. I see Mr. Steven is pulling the hook on me. And also, real quick, just do desk audits. Just see what you got versus what you don't got. Because again, we can keep the conversation going around legislation. And everybody, here's my contact info. Even though I left a brochure, but really, the QR code, just click on that. And thank you for allowing me to speak. Sure, give me a little bit of
Thank you for coming on in.
Oh man, thank you. Is this free? Thank you.
Ain't nothing free in this world, like you said.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming out, and I appreciate it. Like I said, one of our many friends that are in our industry that come and to support us.